Hi everybody, this is the Cricket Badger podcast.
Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
And hello, welcome along, Cricket Badger podcast. We're streaming on that. We're also simultaneously streaming on Gaurav Ayan's YouTube channel as well to take you through a review of the first Ashes Test match. And we can all relax now. What a game that was at Edgbaston. Absolutely fantastic. I'm going to mute Lucas throughout this podcast because he's rather excited. And so I'm joined by Lucas, the usual. He's going to steer us through today's podcast, and also joined by, it's actually a pleasure to welcome him back onto the Cricket Badger podcast version of this. We haven't seen you for a while, Neil, but one of our fan badges, regular fan badges on the Cricket Badger podcast through the IPL, etc. And you're back on as well. So good to see you all. And we'll hand over to you, Lucas. And congratulations, 1-0 Australia.
Thank you very much. And absolutely on the edge of my seat last night, going through a lot of emotions. When I saw Scott Boland play some good shots, I thought we got this in the bag. And then Kawaj and Green just had me in all sorts of emotional. Batting was slow. Then when Carey got out, I lost all hope. But I stayed with it. See, it's a good example for you people out there. You stay with it. Don't go to sleep, because the majority of Australians went to sleep when Carey got out. I stayed up, and the roller coaster emotion in me couldn't stop. I couldn't actually sit down. When we got to 20 runs, I standed up the entire remaining game. I could not sit down. It was just too much. An absolute.
I was commentating on it, Lucas, and I was saying to you before we went live that some sessions of Test cricket are a bit sterile sometimes. You have to kind of manufacture the energy in your commentary. You don't need to on sessions like that. That was absolutely fantastic. And the whole Test match, Lucas, all the way through from ball one, Crawley hits it for 4, but it was like all the sessions were like that. Australia maybe noses ahead, England maybe noses ahead, went all the way through right to effectively the final ball, didn't it? Because it was still possible for England to win 2 quick wickets, and it was theirs.
I think if you look at history and you want a good defined, forget about the BazBall, forget about anything. You want a classic Test match. This is the definition of a classic Test match. It had absolutely everything in this match that you wanted. If this is to anything go by, this is going to be one of the greatest series, not just in Australia versus England, but greatest series of Test match cricket of all time. So let's just hope this stands up. And for my sake, I wanted 5-0, James. Well, 1 down, 4 to go.
You're no chance. I mean, I did on the podcast on the preview. I did suggest that my real prediction was 3-1 Australia. And then because you were so Australian, I kind of flipped it around and went 3-1 England. But I do think Australia. Let's bring Neil into this. I think. I mean, if you look at the world rankings, you look at who's won the World Test Championship. Neil, Australia, I think, are just slightly the better side of the two, and England maybe did quite well to stick with them as long as they did.
The thing with Australia is they've done it for 4 years, pretty much, with the exception of India and Sri Lanka touring there. And the Stokes-McCullum partnership, while they've brought out some thrilling cricket, it's been going for a year. Yeah, I mean that isn't a legacy. That's currently a streak. And the Australians have been doing it for a long time. And I think overall they're a more well-rounded side. England lost probably their most pivotal player before the series started in Jack Leach, because he's the one who allows the bowling lineup to do what they want, to bowl in such an aggressive fashion that's taken 20 wickets in pretty much every single game since Stokes was made captain. And that's been the real success of BazBall. It's been taking the wickets, not the ridiculous strike rates and everything. But Australia have just been doing it for a long time. And honestly, when I saw them in India earlier this year, all right, they came in undercooked, as all Test sides do. But come the third and fourth Test, I still think they were behind, but they were actually giving a very good account of themselves, and they're competitive. And I don't think that's something that we can say of many sides. So overall, you'd say they are the better team for all the hoopla that comes around England at the moment.
Before I hand across to you to steer this ship, Lucas, because the kind of test results are one thing, aren't they? And series results are one thing. But we all know cricket, really, the most important thing of cricket is the world's test rankings. And Joe Root, now the world's #1 test batsman. He's up to the top of the tree. Labuschagne down 2 places to #3. Travis Head down to #4. Steve Smith down to #6. You must be crying in your sleep about this.
The ICC rankings, whether it's bowling, batting, or rounder, they're a complete disgrace. Like you No, but in all seriousness, you're only realising that Joe Root's the #1 best batsman just now. You know, the rankings make absolutely no sense. Like I said, no matter who, if it's keeping rankings, bowling, batting, all rounder, it just doesn't make sense. You know, you can't say to me Joe Root wasn't the #1 batsman. Looking at his form the last 12 months, and before that, you know, making double hundreds, I think, in India, making hundreds in Sri Lanka. Okay, he hasn't made 100 yet in Australia, but we can't define one place as a batsman or a bowler. He's made runs everywhere. He's made runs in this Test match. So to call him the #1 Test match batter only now, that's a complete mess. I'll give Joe Root credit. He coming into this Test match, I thought he should have been the #1 batsman. Steve Smith has not had a better 12 months than Joe Root. He's been more inconsistent, Steve Smith. So the ICC rankings are just all over the place when it comes to this kind of stuff. I don't take them seriously.
I'll tell you what, fair play to you, Lucas, because I thought you were going to diss him for being #1, but you've actually gone the other way, so fair play to you. Sorry, Neil.
I was going to say, the commentary teams have no problem calling Marnus the #1 batter in the world for a long time, despite the fact that 80% of his runs have been at home, and he hasn't really. He scored one very scratchy century in Sri Lanka, but he failed in India. He didn't take advantage of the world's greatest batting conditions in Pakistan in the way that everyone else did. But he's still labelled that, so it means a lot to the commentary team. We'll hear that about Joe Root being #1 all the way through the Lord's Test.
Go on then, Lucas, over to you. Take us where you want to take us.
Yeah, well, I just on that, you know, Neil is right. Marnus Labuschagne, I don't want to put this pressure on him, but he's starting to become, if you want to call him a flat track bully. He scored a majority of his runs in Australia. He's played 2 very poor shots against Broad. He said that he might need to change his technique in England. I don't know why. Doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, I know he got battered in India, but last time I checked, everyone gets battered in India. I just mentioned Joe Root's 200 in India. The matches after that, he didn't make any runs. So I don't know why you would need to change your technique after one poor series, but that's what he's done, and he's looked horrible. He just didn't look horrible in the first Test. He looked horrible against Ireland as well. So I don't know what's going on with there. I think Ricky Ponting made some very good statements about techniques and that. So whether he's overcorrected himself, I'm not an expert batter. My expertise is keeping, as James and Neil would know. And we'll get into Bairstow's keeping a little bit later. Trust me on that. But I just think he's trying too much. It's just ridiculous that you try to change a technique after one poor series.
I disagree with that, because you look at Coley in England, what he had in 2014, he completely revamped how he batted specifically in England, and then scored 600 runs when we next toured. You do need to change your technique per conditions. But the thing is that Australia, just up until last year, they hadn't toured. He hasn't had to face other conditions for a long time. So I don't doubt that he's an excellent batter. I just think that calling him number one and putting him in the same level as a Root or Smith or Coley or Williamson is premature. That's it from honest. I still think he's very good.
Yep. No, I agree with that. He's not. He was never. I didn't see him as ever as the number one batsman in my eyes at any period. But we'll move on from that. I made a prediction. Well, I didn't make a prediction. I don't know if James, if you remember this. I said Australia will be fine as long as they can match them in the batting, because this BazBall thing only works when England are batting. It doesn't work when they're bowling. Now, you disagreed with me that a little bit, James, when it regards to the bowling. But I said as long as Australia match them, they'll be fine. I felt like this. Well, obviously they did match them. They trailed a little bit, but I felt they still matched them in the batting, and I think that's going to be the big difference in this series. If Australia can go with the batting, their bowlers are too good. If you look at the first day where England batted, I looked at that pitch, James and Neil, and I thought maybe 450, maybe even 500. To bowl them out less than, well, Stokes declared, that's another thing. But they did extremely well, Australia, on a flat pitch. A lot of talk saying, did Pat Cummins was negative? I disagree with that completely, because if you look at his fielding, he still had short leg, he still had slips, he still had mid-on, mid-off, he still had attacking fields. But the goal was to stop England from scoring boundaries. Now, I'm going to throw this as an actual a fact here. In the second innings of England's batting, they did not score a boundary for 6 overs. That's the furthest that they've gone under this BazBall since they started without scoring a boundary. So don't say to me this didn't work. This completely worked. And Pat Cummins didn't go too defensive. And he said attacking fields. He just wanted to stop the boundaries. Yes, they scored a lot of singles, but I felt like this tactic working to bowl England out for that total, or James trying to speak, or declare what I'm saying, bold, declared, I think was an outstanding achievement, James.
I agree with you to a degree. I think I said on the preview, excuse me, the biggest mistake Australia could make would be to try and out BazBall England. Yeah. If Australia tried to go along at 7 and over or something, and in an act of bravado and ego or whatever, then that would be their downfall. And they didn't do that. I think what was quite pleasant, I mean, a lot of people saying Australia were negative with the bat and ball, but I think Australia just played their game. And I think that's exactly what Australia should be doing in this. They should go in with their own game plans. Even Ben Stokes, I watched his press conference earlier, said, they do their thing, we do our thing, and that's how it should be. And I think one of the delights of the Test match was the contrasting styles between the two teams playing Test cricket in different ways, but kind of getting to the same end result almost. Where I disagree with you slightly, Lucas, is I think Pat Cummins did go negative in the field in that first hour, because what he did do, it was almost from the first ball. He hadn't really seen what the condition of the pitch was, what the pitch was going to do. Yes, from all the pictures I saw, I wasn't actually Edgbaston on day one, but from all the pictures, it looked like a strawy-coloured track that was absolutely perfect for batting on. And that's what all the talk in the press was of England ordering belters to bat on that were going to be flat track. And it obviously wasn't like that. It was slower than that. It didn't bounce as much. It didn't go through as much. And I don't think Pat Cummins gave himself enough time in those early overs to really work out whether the ball was going to be doing anything, the new ball was going to be doing anything before he put men back to cover the boundaries. Because the one thing about Zach Crawley that you're going to get him with is a ball that moves around, and you need catches in there to pick up the edge and what have you. And if you start to move people back onto the fence early, you've got less catches in there to get Zach Crawley's wickets. I think he went too early, but I agree with you. Ultimately, it was the right tactic. It kind of stifled England's bravado of belting the ball to the fence. I think there was plenty of records broken in that first session. There's a 4 hit off the 2 Australian openers' first balls. Zach Crawley's iconic in inverted commas boundary off the first ball of the innings. A lot said about that, probably too much. And then I think there's more singles in the first 20 overs than any other Test match in England or ever, because they were dropping and running rather than actually cracking the ball to the fence. The run rate was still high without the boundaries because Cummins had gone deep. So I think there was maybe slight issues there, and it was obvious from the fields that he placed very early on. The Australians have said, "Oh, we're not bothered about BazBall. We're going to do our own thing." They're obviously very, very conscious of BazBall because the fields reflected that.
No, I'll give this to Neil, but of course they were very conscious of this. But with the second innings, like I said, it took 6 overs to England score boundary, and the boundary that they scored was a very high risk shot from Ben Duckett, who tried to reverse scoop Nathan Lyon. I looked back, I was sitting down, I saw that, and I thought to myself, if that's what England need to do to score boundaries, we are right in this game. If they need to play high, it's clearly that they wanted to score boundaries because he wouldn't have played that shot. You saw Joe Root try to the first ball after day 3, the scoop of Poland is absolutely amazing. So it's clear that they wanted to score boundaries. It's in their new DNA, if you must say. So how did you see it from that perspective, Neil?
I thought it was brilliant. Muhammad Ali did not try to outpunch George Foreman. He let Foreman punch himself out. If you cover the boundaries, don't let England get too far away. Pretty much everyone in that team, apart from Joe Root, is going to do something stupid at some point. I thought it was a bad strategy against Root because he doesn't have that ego. He will just take the singles all day long.
It played to his strengths, Neil, didn't it?
Yeah, but everyone else, it was absolutely right, because wherever the field are, Crawley, Duckett, Bairstow, Moen, Ben Stokes, the way he has been over the last year and was in the first innings, less so in the second, they're just going to continue to try to hit the boundaries, whatever. And you're going to get those catching opportunities. He did keep some close infielders. And also, I don't think that, I'm not an expert. I was there on day 1, and I was sat pretty much behind the bowler's arm. You could have transplanted that pitch in from India. That was an old school classic Indian pitch, which is going to turn later on, but it's going to be low and slow. The difference between seeing that deck and what you saw day 1 at the Oval for the WTC was like 2 different countries. So I think
Ben Stokes said that the Pakistan tour gave them a lot. They kind of reverted back to a lot of the tactics they used in the field in Pakistan on that pitch at Edgbaston. And the stats on the first morning was, I think there was less lateral movement on the first morning at Edgbaston than any other Test match they've got stats for.
Absolutely
straight.
And you can basically play on the ego of the England batters to basically create those catching opportunities, like Duckett twice going for shots that he doesn't need to. I think someone said that in this Test match he didn't leave a single ball. He certainly, I heard during the Ireland game, he'd only left 8 balls since coming back into the England team, which is just, I can't understand that for a Test opener. That in the way that they say that some players, like say a Lyon or a Rohit Sharma, are sort of compulsive hookers, some of these England players don't have the discipline to wait for the ball that's there. And even if you've got a more attacking mindset, there are still going to be some balls that you just say, no, the risk is too high, I'm going to leave that. And most of the England batters in the current team do not have that discipline, and they'll go for it whatever, and the risk reward isn't that high. and that's why you saw like the Bairstow innings, run a ball 78, but they weren't all off the middle. Whereas you can say Root did not look in trouble at all, and that wasn't a pitch where you should be making as many mistakes as everyone else did.
I've seen a lot of Joe Root ever since he was a teenager at Yorkshire, and that to me, I mean, I've seen him score big hundreds for England. That to me was as good as I've seen him play. The balance at the crease, the awareness of where the field was, just the crisp hitting of it, maybe a little bit of impishness at times. There's a little bit of BazBall kind of rubbed into him with the reverse scoops and what have you. But he looked in as good a form as I've ever seen him. And one thing with Joe Root is that there's twice he's had to take a little bit of a break from cricket. One was enforced by COVID, where he was locked down like everybody else and did a lot of work. He did a lot of watching of other people and a lot of work on himself, came back and scored a prolific amount of runs off the back of the COVID break. And then obviously with the IPL, got signed up for the IPL, hardly played, and spent a lot of time in the nets there working on his game. So the twice he's had some extended periods where he's just worked on his game, he's come back and scored a lot of runs, and he looked really balanced and very good.
I completely agree with how good he looked, but I do think that was a pitch that allowed him to take full advantage, and he was the only one in the England team who really gave themselves that opportunity. As good as the Aussie attack is, and I think they're absolutely excellent, I don't think they'd have got Root out until Stokes pulled the plug prematurely. I think for the most part, I'd say the same about Khawaja as well. I mean, it's kind of ironic considering all the talk about, this is how we play, and new brand of cricket. This is going to save the Test game. The two best batters on show played very traditionally, respecting the good balls, taking advantage of looseness, and cashing in on a really dead track.
The one you spoke about the Australian attack, and I know you're up against time, Neil, so I do apologise if I'm annoying you, James. The one bowler that really impressed me was Nathan Lyon. If you said to me Nathan Lyon's going to take 4 wickets on the first day, you would say I'm dreaming. I'm absolutely in la la land. He was magnificent on that first day, Nathan Lyon. Yes, he leaked runs, but he kept the ball in the same place over and over again. He wasn't afraid. He said, "You can hit me, but if you miss it, I'm going to get you." And look what happened to Johnny Bairstow. Missed it, stumped. Moeen Ali missed it, stumped. Pope, same place. That leg side ball missed, LBW. Nathan Lyon was absolutely fantastic on day. And they were fantastic all the way through the first test, but especially that day one, unreal.
I don't think there's really much conversation there. It is just factually correct. For me, the second best spinner of our generation, and you're talking about an all-time great. These up against, he's superb, and also the improvement that he's made that is visible outside Australia in the last 5-6 years has been huge. I think he's even more important to the Australian team and how they work than Jack Leach is. One thing I did see on about Nathan Lyon that I quite enjoyed was everyone was talking about how he was going to miss out on the footmarks that Stark usually creates, but by coming over the wicket, he's kind of created his own footmarks because he kept switching from side to side. He's taken the reliance on the fast bowlers creating rough for him out of the equation, which I really quite liked.
James?
I think I can't add anything more to Nathan Lyon. I think he's a class act. And I watched Ben Stokes' press conference, and they asked him about the drop catch he had on the final session, which would have been very similar to the one he caught in the World Cup against South Africa, going over his head if he'd managed to hold on to it. And he said there's a certain kind of beauty or kind of with sport that, 4 years ago at Headingley, Nathan Lyon was the person that dropped the catch to run out Jack Leach at the non-strikers end. They lost that match. Ben Stokes, scroll on 4 years, drops the catch at Edgbaston. Nathan Lyon's one of the not-out batsmen, and he said, he was smiling when he said it. There's almost like a thing of beauty with that in terms of the way sport kind of bites you in the backside, maybe sometimes. But I think a couple of people on Twitter, I was a little bit critical of Moeen because I thought in the first innings, Moeen, even before his finger became an issue, his control of his length and his control of his line was just so much less consistent than Nathan Lyon's had been. And I think, and I think he was handed a hospital pass. Bringing a bowler that hasn't bowled for 2 years in red ball cricket is it's unfair on Moeen. And it's always going to be obvious that he was going to struggle, not just with the finger, but with just rhythm and, the ability to land the ball in the same place over and over again. It just, if you haven't done it for 2 years, it's muscle memory, it's all that kind of stuff. So Moeen was really up against it, and Nathan Lyon, I felt, outbowled him all the way through. And it just shows you on, the final day when Moeen's finger was becoming a real issue, that Joe Root bowled so many, and Moeen was kind of taking out the attack, wasn't he?
Are you going to suggest that Moeen was consistent when he was bowling regularly? That was an absolute standard. Moeen,
there were more really rank balls from Moeen than usual, I think. And I felt as well, to bring him in like they did. I mean, we talked about it on the preview. He wouldn't have been my pick. There are very few other candidates that are going way. Selectors, I'm a massive spinner, and I want to come and play for your test team, but it wouldn't have been Moeen for me. And I think that it's kind of, you're almost taking your life in your hands when you start to even politely criticize Moeen Ali on Twitter or social media, because Moeen's got almost like a cult feverish following. People people really love Moeen. And I'd understand why, because he's a class act. He's been a fantastic player, likable bloke, all the rest of it. But I don't think he's immune to criticism. And I think I just didn't think he quite performed as I would have hoped, even with all the caveats, as I would have hoped he would have done. There was a couple of real belting balls in there amongst it. Every now and again he landed one and it absolutely ripped. But apart from that, it was a little bit mediocre, I felt, from Moeen in this test.
That's what you get from Moeen, and like from my England watching time. Moeen can bowl the greatest ball in the world, but he's never been one to bowl economically. There's always a boundary ball pretty much every over. His economy rate is horrendous, always has been, but he will occasionally provide that ball which just out of nowhere takes out a player. And like we saw yesterday, Travis Head took down 3 out of 4 balls in a row, and then suddenly, absolutely beautiful delivery from Moeen to take the edge, and
he was left there like a goldfish, wasn't he, with his mouth open, going, "What? Where did that come from?"
Yeah. Can we use that as the meme instead of Rashid Takoli now?
Lucas, there's a couple of messages coming on the platform. I'll just read them out. Stephen Williams has been in touch. Hello, Stephen. He says England gifted Australia victory with declaration, waiving an additional 50 plus runs as insurance. But then he carries on to saying, looking forward to the second test, focusing as wicketkeeper, Wood for Anderson, plus Rian Ahmed for Moeen. I mean, we can maybe talk about the selection bit of that in a second. But I mean, just on the declaration, Lucas, as an Aussie, when you saw Ben Stokes waving them in from the balcony, what was your first reaction to that?
Is he out of his mind? Because if it wasn't Root that was there, I'd understand it. Joe Root looked at me, as Neil said, he wasn't once troubled. Joe Root, he could have made 150, could have made 160 easily. Now, the declaration itself, if that's the way Ben Stokes wants to captain, then I want to see it in the second test. If he gets into that situation, if he pulls out of the second test and says no, we're not going to do that again, then obviously he's made a grave mistake.
Well, Michael Vaughan was saying yesterday, I saw Neil's comment on this, and I commented on it too on Twitter. Yeah. Michael Vaughan says there's no way on the first day at Lords, if he's in the same position, he won't declare. Neil was along the same lines of my reaction was, course he will. He's going to double down
Yeah.
on this. He's going to
Yeah.
declare it. He's going to say, this is how we play. Because, I mean, the amount of times I've heard that this is how he plays or this is how we play during this test match was just crazy. And if it comes up again, he's going to go again. He'll declare again.
And that's completely fine. If he's sticking with it, if that's the captain he wants to be, that's obviously how England want to play. That's completely fine. But I personally, from a standpoint, I thought it was just madness. Why would you do that when you have a guy that's 120 not out looking at absolutely like $1 million?
There's a few people said if they hadn't pulled out when they did, we wouldn't have had the finish we did, and therefore we wouldn't have all the drama on the final day. You can't say that in Test match cricket. You just can't say that.
We lost a day to rain, and no one can forecast that. So the fact that it went down to the last 5 overs, I mean that's irrelevant to the declaration.
Yeah.
The issue that I had with the declaration, like I say, I was sitting there, and it took us, until the time that Root had walked off to actually figure out what was going on, because we were the other end. The issue was he left himself with only 4 overs. So if it was perfect batting conditions, but even if it wasn't, if it was great bowling conditions, you need more than 4 overs to actually make it worthwhile.
And it was obviously preordained, because I was watching the full day back the other day during the rain break, and the Joe Root's shots suddenly got very, very big for the
there was a
final
switch.
2 overs. They obviously sent the message out saying we're going to pull out in a couple of overs, make as much as you can in the next sort of 2 or 3 overs, whatever it was, go up a gear, and then we're withdrawing. So it was obviously decided before Root really opened his shoulders and started hitting 60s down the ground. So I must admit, my first reaction, and I tweeted this, was I really like that, because I was getting swept away with the old BazBall thing. It was infecting me. I was getting BazBalled up, and then I saw a few other comments, and I sort of sat back overnight and I thought about it, and I thought, no, I don't actually like it. That's crazy. In a test match, you've got 5 days. Don't forget there are 5 full days of play. Yes, we did get rain, and yes, it kind of ended up going almost the duration anyway, but you make as many as you can. First innings, you make as many as you can. And ultimately, I actually think both teams left runs out there. I think first innings on that track, 450, 500 was the par score, not 400.
Yeah. I think as bold as that was, because it was very bold, I think, just trying to remember, I don't know if you guys remember, Faf du Plessis did that in Australia under the lights with the pink ball, where I think South Africa was 7 down, and he declared because he wanted to bowl to Australia with the pink ball under lights. Where
I think Ben Stokes has done that as well, Lucas. And I think it's a different thing when you know the conditions going to change with that pink ball under lights than if it's just a normal day's Test cricket.
Yeah, but Michael
Clark did it.
Yeah,
Michael
you
Clark
hit the nail on the head, Neil. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Why would you do that when they had limited overs? At least when Faf did, he had 10, 15 overs left. As you mentioned,
Clark did it with 4, but the difference was he declared in Hyderabad when he got out, and it was Doherty and whoever the number 10 was left, and he said, maybe I can winkle something out here, but there's no one else who can really score runs.
I think
was saying like football.
If Joe Root had got out, then I could see the purpose of a declaration.
Completely.
I agree with that. Yeah.
But Joe Root, as Lucas said, he could quite easily scored another 40 or 50 runs, because the guys at the other end, whether it be Jimmy Anderson, even, they can stay there for a while and let Joe Root rotate the strike and score some boundaries.
Robinson wasn't having any issues at all. Absolutely no issues. But someone did say
he wasn't having any issues with the bat. He was having issues, but not with the bat.
we might talk about that in a second, because I've got some strong opinions on that, and Twitter's been very 50-50 with my Ollie Robinson comments.
I've seen that, James. I've seen that.
Ben Stokes did save however much the new ball cost, though, by declaring before the 80 overs. So little bit of money, cost of living crisis. That's one positive for the ECB.
Good, please. This ridiculous. Is that what he's really trying to say? That he wants to save money?
No, he never said that. He never said that.
I was gonna say, I think we're going a little bit too far now. If we're doing that.
Here's the other thing that we haven't mentioned yet, and I'll make it quick because I'm going to have to jump in 5. But in that game, Australia bowled 60 overs less than England did. We've got 5 Test matches in 6 weeks. With England have got a 40-year-old, a 36-year-old, a medium pacer who was forced to downgrade to off spin last Ashes because he wasn't fit enough. Lost their first choice spinner. Second choice spinner's finger is a bloody mess. That sort of thing is actually going to matter. And if you think, and I know I'm expected to take everything back to India, but you think the 2 series that we won in Australia, the way that we did it was by basically wrecking the Aussie bowling attack over after over of bowling, so that by the end they were just completely knackered. That's the downside to BazBall and declarations like that. You're not putting the miles in the legs of a touring team who, despite the couple of guys who are playing county cricket, do not have the resources to replace bowlers as easily as they would do.
With that declaration, they basically gave all of the Australian bowlers day 2 off, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned it in the last show, James, that Australia, they're not going to have a run rate of 6 or 7. They're going to bat for 2 days while making 350.
So that's part of the deal with Test cricket. You grind your opposition into the ground. You do what they don't want to do. And I know you said that they wanted to give the openers 4 overs. But I was listening to the coverage on the TV and the radio, and the openers that were concerned, they were saying, "Well, it wouldn't have bothered me. 4 overs at the end of the play wouldn't have bothered me too much. You know exactly how many balls you have to get through. You know that there's, you might get a Jaffa, but you're probably going to survive. You're going to be able to start in the following morning. I don't think it's necessarily the psychological test that Ben Stokes maybe thought it might have been.
Not on day 1.
No.
We'll move on to the Ollie Robinson Khawaja little beef. I'll head straight to all this because you do got to go. Do you agree with what Robinson did? Do you think it was from my point of view? From my point of view, I don't have a problem with it. But why would you do it when a batsman's on 140? That made no sense to me.
I don't like what he did. I think when we're talking about Ollie Robinson, there are much worse things that he said previously. So quite frankly, a little bit of swearing isn't going to get me completely riled up. I thought it was unnecessary, and you look a bit of an idiot when you're doing it to a guy on 140. And it's the start of a series. As well as Robinson bowled, it's not like he'd just rip through a team. That's going to come back and bite him. And what I didn't like was his rationalization that professional sport requires swearing at your opposition, and that's the theatre. That's rubbish. The theatre is the actual cricket that they're playing, which he does very well. The verbals I can understand. I'm not going to get completely bent out of shape, but saying that it doesn't have to be part and parcel of it, as people have said, and as we need to mention on any Test match in England, especially ones which don't involve the West Indies, you have to look back at the West Indies bowlers from the late 70s, early 80s. They didn't say a word. I mean, it helped that they were 6'8" brick outhouses.
They didn't have time to say a word because the batters are out too quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just not needed. But this whole thing that this is how we act, this is how we play. That's where I think there's a cult now, that you can't criticize or critique anything that this England team does, and that everyone needs to act and play in the same way. The evangelical nature of some of the commentary from people who should know better. There are teams that have been successful for a lot longer playing different ways, and you're allowed to play different ways and still be successful.
James?
Made me really angry, as you could see on Twitter. I hate it. I don't see why I mean, I got a lot of people coming back to me saying it's all about passion. Passion's good. You can be passionate without calling somebody out or calling somebody a name, can't you? You know, the celebration can be anything. You can be kind of clenching your fist. You can be high-fiving everybody. You can be running to the crowd. You can be doing all sorts of stuff to show your passion. It doesn't have to be calling somebody an effing prick, does it? As they walk off after scoring 140. Aussie Kawaji played really well. He's probably the most mild-mannered person in cricket. He's so relaxed and laid back and seems to be a really nice guy. Seems to be the last person that could be described as an effing prick in the Australian camp. And I think it actually just shows Ollie Robinson up to be a kind of lacking in a bit of cricketing, well, just human intelligence to me. I mean, I've had people like Jeffrey Boycott and stuff kind of supporting what I've said on Twitter. I've had Tim Bresner's kind of came to me saying, well, you'll never understand what it's like kind of attitude. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't think you have to have played at the very highest level to actually know how humans' brains work and human emotions work. We've all played at our respective levels in matches that mean an awful lot to us. And I've taken wickets. There's one guy in our local league that used to score centuries against us left, right, and centre. Every time we played him, he scored runs. And then I bowled a really nice ball at him one day, took his off stump out. And rather than go F off you effing prick, I just celebrated with my teammates and was really happy with myself. I don't think you have to call people names to actually enjoy yourself in this modern world. I don't get it. I mean, I walk around towns and some people can't string sentences together without having a swear word in the middle of it. It's just people's vocabulary. Swearing is more common these days. But I just think it's disrespectful. You've got to respect yourself. You've got to respect your opposition and respect the sport you're playing. And I think calling people names is not the way to do that.
No, like I said, like what if you made first ball dark low 10 or something, but not a guy that's got regardless of who it is.
I don't care how many runs he scored.
Yeah,
I don't care how many. If he's out for 0 or out for 180, doesn't make any difference to me. I mean, the kind of his platform and his standing is a little bit weaker because he has just been knocked around the park by the guy. But I mean, I've seen people say, well, the Aussies who would have done that to us in 1970s, 1980s. English bowlers in the past would have done it as well. Don't care. You can be all the things you want to be in the past. You can be better tomorrow, can't you? And if we want to try and make the game accessible to kids watching, if we want to try and stop people playing on a Saturday and a Sunday in the UK, trying to emulate their heroes on the park by calling people an effing prick every 5 seconds, and the umpires having to try and take action against that, which we're struggling in a lot of leagues to actually recruit umpires and officials because of poor behaviour on the park. This England team, as well as trying to save Test cricket and as well as entertaining and as well as trying to do all the stuff they're doing, has a little bit of responsibility to lead the way and show the rest of the cricket how to play. And calling somebody an effing prick is not professional. It is not part of the theatre. It's just poor behaviour.
Did Ollie Robinson get a fine for that?
I've not seen anything, actually. I don't know.
No, I haven't. I
don't know yet.
I know that Australia and England got fined World Test Championship points and match fee because of slow over rates, but I didn't really see anything on Robinson. So what's that message sending, James? If there's no fine,
well, I mean, I think they should fine him and certainly give him a demerit point or something. Because I just don't think it's right. But I mean, it boiled over into yesterday as well. There were the kind of words between the two of them yesterday too. Yeah. And I think Ollie Robinson needs to be very careful because I mean, the tweets that Neil referred to from ages ago, which he's apologised for, and which we should be able to forget and kind of move on from. He's picking out the one Muslim in the Australian team. That's not a great look with his history.
It's not a great look, but I don't think he was going down that line though.
I don't know. But he's kind of laying himself open to that. He needs to be.
I understand.
He needs to be. I think with Ollie Robinson, I mean, he left Yorkshire under a cloud because he acted like an immature pillock years and years ago. Obviously, I had a huge amount of respect for him to going to Sussex, rebuilding his career, doing all the stuff he's done to.
Guys, it's been fun. I'm going to jump. Cheers, guys.
We wish you all the best, Neil. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. We appreciate it.
But I think, and I think he's got the ability to be a fantastic bowler in Test cricket, to be a fixture in England's team for a long, long time, and to be somebody that we can all enjoy watching. But I just get the impression, just kind of watching his demeanour during these early parts of this Ashes series, He already thinks he's the finished article. He always thinks he's an Ashes hero. He's acting like somebody that's actually achieved a lot more in the game than he has done. And I don't like that really. I prefer people.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion. I just prefer people to be a little bit more humble and a bit nicer than people that are acting like the big Billy Big whatevers.
Yeah, the Charlie Big. Yeah. But I saw comments on Twitter saying it was racist. I don't think that's where he was going.
I don't know. I don't think there was any racism in the comments he made. I don't think there was any racism in the subsequent little contretongs. But given his history,
I agree.
He just
did
needs
leave himself open.
He's picking out the one
agree.
guy. He's picking out the one guy of colour in the Australian team, isn't he? Yeah.
But he wasn't the only one that did it. I don't know if you're aware of this. Marnus Labuschagne gave some back to Ollie Rob. Yeah.
That his mouth never stops.
I made a tweet about that saying, maybe if he was good with his catching, like his mouth, he might become a good fielder.
I think cricket's better than that. I mean, you watch football, people diving all over the place, people swearing at referees and stuff. It's become commonplace in that game. I don't want it to be commonplace in this game. I know a lot of people said, fair play to Ollie, give it to him and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, take his wicket, celebrate, show passion, show enthusiasm, show emotion. You don't have to call him an effing prick, do you?
Well, absolutely. And what Labuschagne said to Ollie Robinson when he ducked a ball, that wasn't nice. But do you think TV coverage, they kind of stir the pot a bit by letting up the mic stump, letting that be heard?
I don't think TV was going to really refer to it. I mean, I quite like the fact that the mics are on, and I don't think it's a bad thing. For players to be caught out for saying something that's out of order is not a bad thing. I think we need to clean up the game rather than allow people to go around behaving like that. I think Ollie Robinson's a tremendous player. I just wish he would maybe just shut his mouth a little bit and run in hard and bowl his balls and win the Ashes with his play rather than try and do all of these mind games and little personal battles, which I don't think he's necessarily cut out for.
How did well, we're going to talk about selection. Johnny Bairstow, obviously he's had a stinker with the gloves. From what I saw, his technique was very poor, especially with spinners. He was not rising up to the ball as good enough as Carey was. I don't know if you saw the masterclass, but Sangakkara did a masterclass side by side with Carey and Johnny Bairstow with the stumping that Johnny Bairstow missed and the stumping that Carey took. And you could clearly see Johnny Bairstow wasn't rising correctly with the ball. As a keeper, you get taught to stay as low as possible, very low as possible. And Johnny Bairstow wasn't doing that. But I don't think one bad game should define your career, or whether you're keeping, bowling, batting. I think he did have there's no doubt he had a poor match with the gloves, no doubt. But I think to say, we've got to get rid of the gloves from him, I think that's a little bit of an overreaction. However, James, what do you do? If you want to keep Bairstow, do you move him up to the top of the order, get rid of Crawley, and you bring in Frokes? What do you do?
England will play, in reality, regardless of what anybody says. England will play the same top 8 if Moen's fit as they played at Edgbaston. That's what will happen. So we can talk till we're blue in the face on the rest of it. But I mean, Johnny's very proud about his keeping. He's better than he showed at Edgbaston.
Of course.
Has to be said. Lords is a harder place to keep than Edgbaston with the slope and everything else. That actually makes it a harder place to keep at Lords. So he's not going to have it any easier in the second test. He will have the gloves in the second test. There's no doubt. They will keep faith in him. One of the things about this Brendan McCullum era is that they show trust in the players. Johnny will be, as I say, he's very proud of his keeping. He will be very hard on himself, and I'm sure he will work incredibly hard over the next 7 days to be ready for Lords to show people and prove people wrong. He's very good at that. Every time anybody in Johnny's career has doubted him, he's tended to bounce back with something extraordinary, usually with the bat. But he's better than he showed at Edgbaston. That's where my support of Johnny gets to. I think Ben Stokes is head and shoulders a better keeper than anybody else talked about for England. I would love to see Ben Stokes in the England team. And I think when you are dropping players, even in this match, I mean, the kind of my usual saying is you drop Steve Smith on 2 and he goes on to score 350 or something, you've probably cost yourself the match. But even in this one, he dropped Cam Green. Cam Green went on to score runs. He dropped Carey. Carey went on to score more runs. But it's not just those individual runs from that batter. It's the partnership they shared with Kawaji. You can count that as well, because that's cost England. So ultimately, those runs, kind of the runs they kind of forsaked with the declaration, and the runs that were cost by the drop chances or the misstumping and the drop chances, cost England, didn't they? You kind of add those into the part, and he's maybe taken one of those chances and things. When it's that tight a match, you don't have to change a huge amount of the build up to that for England to have won that game. So Johnny will go away from Edgbaston feeling a little bit sore. I think he might say he doesn't read the papers and read the comments, but I don't know many players that actually really in reality don't. And he will want to put it right at Lords. He's got a challenge ahead of himself, but he'll want to put it right at Lords. I think the ankle injury has affected him. I think it's just affected his movement. It's his balance. I mean, you know from keeping, it's the footwork is the massive part of keeping. And when your feet aren't moving, it means your hands have to do all of the work, and you're moving further with your hands away from your eye line, all the rest of it, and it makes it difficult. And Johnny's got an issue there. Yeah,
as long as you move your feet, if you can't see, if you're not going to get to the ball with your eyes, as long as you move your feet, you'll be fine. The feet is the key word. It is the most important thing about keeping. Whether you leave the line of sight, just as long as you keep moving your feet, you will be okay.
I mean, Johnny desperately wants to keep wicket for England. I mean, but ultimately, you've got to pick your best 11, and it's up to obviously Brendan McCullum, Rob Key, and co to work out whether. I mean, Johnny stays in the 11 regardless. It's not like you're dropping him.
Of course.
It's just whether he has the gloves or not, and it's how you fit Ben Folkes into the 11, because it would be Folkes. It's how you fit Ben Folkes into the 11. Should you take the gloves off Johnny? The obvious way of doing that is to shoehorn. I mean, I did my as was pointed out, it was more like 14 or 15, so I put different options for the bowlers in there. But my route was to put Harry Brook up to open and take out one of Duckett and Crawley. Stephen Williams has just any views on Duckett as an opener? Well, I mean, he's quite heavy-footed and he does play everything. And against on flat tracks against weaker teams, you can maybe get away with that. He didn't get away with it in the first test, but the ball wasn't really moving. If the ball starts moving around, Stephen, he's going to struggle, isn't he? So he needs to maybe think about how he attacks that, because he's a good player. I think Ben Duckett is a very good player.
I think he's a good player as well.
Equally, if Zach Crawley could have taken around that pitch from morning one of Edgbaston to anywhere he plays in the world, he'd be averaging 80. Because when the ball's not moving sideways, Zach Crawley looks $1 million. As soon as the ball starts moving, as it did in the second innings for him, he edges to slip or to keeper. So both of the openers have their plus sides in kind of the scoring rate and how they can put the pressure on the opening bowlers. But both the openers have got weaknesses that the Aussies will be doing their utmost to try and expose. So it's an interesting one. But who opens? Bairstow's never opened in red ball cricket. Stokes has never opened in red ball cricket. Harry Brook has, but he didn't do very well for Yorkshire when he was an opener for them. So the options are a bit limited. If you're going to try and shoehorn folks in, I don't know how you do it really. So I think Bairstow keeps the gloves for at least the second, if not second test, if not further on, unless he has another really, really bad game at Lords, he will keep the gloves for probably the entire series. He's good. He's a good keeper. Just those.
He was good against Ireland. He was good in the Ireland test.
But just those feet aren't quite moving right for him, and he probably needs to go away and work with Bruce French or somebody from the England setup and just spend a week where he's maybe dancing around, getting those feet dancing and getting himself back into sync.
Side to side drills are probably the best for a keeper when it comes to that kind of stuff. And then as long as you don't premeditate, because I think he was a little bit guilty of that. At times he got wrong-footed. Premeditating.
It's easy done to get wrong-footed when the ball's maybe kind of going down the leg side. And you set off in that direction, anticipating the ball going down the leg, and then all of a sudden the batsman's squared up and the catch goes the other way. You've given yourself more to do. That is true. That's correct. But side to side drills will help you with that. Obviously, if a bowler's bowling 140 clicks an hour and it goes off the bat, there's not much you can do about that. Though the bowler might not agree with you and give you the teapot or a stare down.
But in those rare cases, there's nothing you can do. But side-to-side drills will work with those. And I just think that, he's been keeping for a long time. You just don't snap out of it. As long as you do your drills, you'll be fine. I think he'll be. He might look like $1 million the next match. So, and
he's not as good, just naturally not as good a keeper as Ben Folkes.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, well, he's a makeshift keeper. He's a sort of they only play him for his batting. Johnny's been keeping wickets since he was a kid. He's not somebody that's been manufactured into a keeper. He's been had the gloves on since he was a kid. He's wanted to follow.
Unlike me, James, that has been manufactured into a keeper. I used to be a bowler.
Johnny's dad was a keeper. Johnny's dad played for England, and Johnny's trying to travel the same path, and he's done. He's up until this last test. He's dropped catches like every keeper, but up until this last test, his keeping has never had quite the scrutiny because he had a very poor game, and he'll know that. He'll know
that. With England's bowling now, Stuart Broad mid-test said, funny enough, because this is what Ben Stokes wanted. Stuart Broad said these wickets don't do anything for him, and we saw that in the fourth. Or you're dying to say something.
I don't think this wicket was what Stuart Broad, Ben Stokes, or the England camp ordered. This wicket, I know Gary a little bit, the Edgbaston groundsman, and it's a tough job making the track. When you have weather and various things, the preparations may be compromised, and it looked like $1 million. From a visual perspective, that track looked like a batting paradise. It just didn't have the pace in it, and I think England wanted a track that was a little bit quicker, bounced a bit more. That's what they've ordered. So I mean, if they'd ordered that track off Amazon, they would have probably sent it back. But you can't do that in a test match, so they have to play on it. But it wasn't quite the wicket. The only thing with that is that you order. We've said this before, but you order a batting paradise. It maybe negates the Andersons and the Stokes and the Broads and what have you, and the Robinsons. But it also negates the Cummins, Hazelwoods. You might affect your opposition, but you affect yourself as well. So, I think you look at the two teams. I reckon bowling wise, there's actually in English conditions, there's probably not a huge amount between them. If England got a green top and that they could actually use well, Pat Cummins would be and Hazelwood would be awesome on it. So it's difficult, isn't it?
We saw the green top. We saw the green top when the rain came down on day 3, and the skies were grey. If there was any case where England might change their ways, they would have looked at that pitch when it was raining, cloud cover, and see Scott Boland absolutely go through. He didn't take wickets, but just traumatised Joe Root for the 15 minutes, traumatised Johnny Bairstow for 15 minutes, got rid of Zach Crawley. That was an indication that they had no chance they're going to change their ways, because that's what's going to happen. With players like Boland's, players like Hazelwood's.
You serve up a pitch that's perfect for Jimmy Anderson. It's perfect for a few in the Aussie camp as well, isn't it? So you're not going to make your life any easier by doing that.
So it tells me that Australia, from their perspective, Australia will play those conditions better if they did make green tops. We saw that in Brisbane against South Africa.
I wouldn't necessarily say they'll play them better. I think it affects both sides equally. I think, why would Australia be better with the green top than England?
Well, we saw that in Australia, James, in South Africa, where we saw the Gabba, the most greenest pitch in the Gabba you ever see in your life at the Gabba. And Australia batsmen handled that much better than South Africa's batsmen.
Well, English batters are used to kind of this is kind of English material, isn't it? Green tops, the English batters coming on it. Not many batters like it when it's moving around. The reason that Australia were all out for such a paltry amount at Trent Bridge those years ago was because it started to move around a lot. I think it actually hamstrings both teams batting wise.
Well, that's why I said if Australia can match them with the bat, I think they'll be okay. And so far, that theory's held up. Because I think Australia's quality, I think they're going to be smart. They're going to rotate bowlers, something they didn't do in the Indian series, and it hurt them badly. They did do it to an extent. I don't know if you remember the 2019 Ashes where they used Siddle. Who's the other fast bowler they used? Patterson. Almost worked out for them. They did draw that series. So they're going back to the rotations. I think we'll see Stark this next test. I think they'll keep Boland because he made 20 runs. I didn't think he was good with the ball. He was only good with the ball when as I mentioned, it was
Lucas,
heavy.
you don't keep Scott bowling for his batting.
Well, can you give him an excuse to drop?
Sorry.
So can you give me from Australia's perspective, they're looking for an excuse to drop players. And Scott, without Scott Boland's 20, they don't win that match.
You don't pick Scott Boland for his batting.
Of course not. No, of course not. But you
Mitchell Stark can provide those 20.
Of course. But let's look at Jack Leach, who made that 90. I said to this in many podcasts that he's got money in the bank probably because of that innings.
Biggest problem for Jack Leach, I think, that affected his career. He became a cult hero for that 1 and that 90.
Yeah.
And it actually maybe distracted from the fact that he wasn't necessarily a fully fledged spinner. I think Jack Leach, said in the preview, Jack Leach made himself into as good a player as made himself into as good a player as he possibly can do. He's not now, obviously he's not a vintage spinner, but he's got that cult hero status for taking his glasses off and cleaning them during that 2019 run chase. All of those other things. Yeah.
Well, in the same way, Scott Boland's got that cult figure now. Obviously, he didn't score 90 in this match, but they're a very crucial 20 runs he made.
So but I think you bring Mitchell Stark in. He's more than capable of scoring.
No, of course. I think I'm the same.
So you basically pick from an Australian perspective, in my opinion, you pick the best bowling attack for the Lord's track, and whoever misses out doesn't miss out because of their batting.
No, personally, I don't think they will change, but they did say they do. Not all bowlers will play 6 tests, and that includes the only bowler that I think will play 6 tests, including the World Test Championship, because they're basically back-to-back Test matches, where England got the week off from Ireland. The only bowler I see playing all those matches is Nathan Lyon. So, and Cummins has basically said that. He said we will rotate our bowlers. Himself,
I think Cummins will play if he possibly can. If he can get himself through this series and play all 5, he'll do it. But it's going to be an ass, isn't it?
Yeah, he hasn't done that previously. He didn't do that in the Ashes in Australia. Yeah. He didn't do that in the West Indies because of load management. So I don't think he'll play all 5 tests. I think ideally,
what they'll do though, Lucas, they'll look at the pitches that they are playing on. Over the next 4 test matches, and where they think there's a bit of pace, they'll bowl they'll take their faster bowlers. Where they think there may be a little bit of lateral movement, they'll probably play the ones that they think they can nip it around a bit more. But and England will do exactly the same thing. Old Trafford, I'm sure Mark Wood will play at Old Trafford because that's a pacey track. There's a kind of bit of a misnomer that which I don't think some people have got around yet. That Headingley is a seam bowler's paradise, but in recent years it's actually been a run fest of a place. It's so you still see the previews of Headingley Test matches saying, they need to pick the seamers. Not anymore. You probably you definitely play a spinner at Headingley these days, and you expect the batting sides to get runs there. They'll be very careful. I think they'll look at the venues and they'll already have. I would imagine both camps will already have an 11 for each of those Test matches.
So there's no doubt that Australia will rotate their bowlers. Like I said, personally, I think Stark should come in. Whether it's Hazlewood, whether it's Boland that goes out, either way, I think Stark will play because of what Cummins has said, rotation. But with England's team, do you honestly think that they should just stay with Joe Root as a spinner and just go with an extra seamer? Possibly
at Lords. I think that might be a temptation at Lords. I've got a few questions here, Lucas. One of them will bring us back onto what you've just said, but I tweeted it earlier and asked for a few questions, and Stephen Williams was mentioning the England team as well, where he said Folkes in for wicketkeeper, Wood in for Anderson, and Rian Ahmed in for Moeen. But in terms of the
sorry to interrupt, James. Is that the spinner that played in Pakistan?
Yes.
I mean,
Rian Ahmed, he is a potentially superb international player. Got no hesitation in saying that. He could be top class, and he bats properly.
He was good in Pakistan,
So he can ultimately for England. He could bat easily at number 7 and bowl your spin overs. So I've got no hesitation in saying that Rian Ahmed will play. Everything else being equal, fitness permitting, he will play probably 100 Test matches. He's that good. But I kind of looked at him when he was playing for Leicestershire the other day, and it was a day 4 track, and Callum Parkinson, their other spinner, had bowled 28 30 overs, and Rian Ahmed had only bowled 5. And with all due respect to Leicestershire in the county championship, they're one of the weaker teams in the county championship. So if Rian Ahmed can't be a frontline spinner bowling a lot of overs on day 4 of a county championship game for Leicestershire, then is he going to be England's frontline spinner in an Ashes series? I don't think so just yet. I think his time will come, absolutely. India tour in the winter, take him, fill him with bags of experience and get him to become the real deal. I don't think an Ashes series is necessarily exactly the right time for Rian Ahmed to come in. There are others. There's Liam Dawson. There's Carson at Sussex has got a few mentions as well. That they're not hanging from the rafters, spinners. So the temptation, I think, with for Lords may be to, which isn't really a spinner's paradise necessarily. It would be to have Joe Root as your spinner and maybe just pick an extra seamer. I mean, that may be a way to get Ben Folkes in, but Chris Wokes has got a phenomenal record at Lords. Jimmy Anderson's record at Lords is excellent. Jimmy seemed to be totally off the boil in this first match. He looked grumpy throughout. He always does, but he looked, and it was quite revealing, wasn't it, when Ben Stokes at the end there with the new ball didn't give it to Jimmy Anderson, he gave it to Ollie Robinson and Stuart Broad. So I don't know what the issue is with Jimmy, whether he's not quite there fitness wise or whether it's just not coming out right or something. But there's something to watch for there.
The one thing you can tell if a bowler's injury's got a niggle is the bowling speed. If you look at their speed, I thought James Anderson was okay in that department, so I couldn't really pick up that kind of. I just don't think the pitch. I don't think the pitch suited him.
No, it just wasn't his surface, was it? And you're right, Jimmy Anderson off at your peril. He's the finest bowler probably that England have ever had in the pace department. So you don't write Jimmy Anderson off. But there's just something not quite right. And Ben Stokes obviously gave Robinson and Broad the ball at Edgbaston because they'd take more wickets during the match, and he was looking for wickets. So I guess that was why. I'm going to run through these tweets, Lucas, and we'll pick out the bits as we go through. But John Surtees has said, "Here's my question: why is everyone so surprised? Everything about this team, the selection, the declaration, the tactics has been exceptionally predictable. And why does everyone now expect changes? They might bring Wood in, but any other changes are extremely unlikely." So, he's talking about team predictions there. And basically harking back to the fact that the England camp is quite loyal and doesn't change it around. So I think he's right in terms of the top 8. If Moeen's fit, he plays. They've got 7 days to try and sort him out. Like he says, I think probably the only change might be somebody with a bit more speed in for either Anderson or Broad or Robinson, depending on how they've shaped up when they come back and report back for duty in 3 or 4 days' time. So that I think John's got that bang on. Why was Dawson not picked, says Cricket Analytics. Very odd after Broad interview about the spinner holding at one end. Why did we have no backup plans for Jack Leach being injured? That's a really good point, I think, because often, when you look at football teams, you see a manager has almost like a backup 11, where you got your right backs in order of how they're going to be picked and your left backs and so on. And this doesn't seem, they put so much into Jack Leach. Obviously, Callum Parkinson was playing a test match. Matt Parkinson was playing a test match not that much long ago, and he's just gone backwards and now signed for Kent from Lancashire after hardly playing. Rian Ahmed played in Pakistan, but is he ready yet? I don't know. Liam Dawson's probably the safest pair of hands, probably more consistent and also bats a little bit. So he would have been my pick. But I think in truth, what they'll do is they'll try and bandage Moeen up as much as possible, and we'll see Moeen again at Lords. So. That's how I would see it.
Is Ollie Robinson not a good fit for a spinner?
I will ignore that underhand comment. The next one, Jeremy Surtees says, "Does Moeen play at Lords? Who replaces him if not?" We've all kind of covered that, really, haven't we? We all know that Bairstow keeps the gloves for Lords at least, but if Folkes does come in after that, who misses out? Go back to that in a second. Was Moeen's injury bad luck or predictable based on the fact he hasn't played any long-form cricket? We said last week, didn't we? When you haven't played for 2 years and you're looking at those calluses and your fingers and the rhythm and everything, it was asking an awful lot of Moeen to come in and just hit the ground running, and he didn't.
You know.
So I think it was quite predictable.
The So the selection itself was a bit of a shock because that's the last spinner I thought would come in. That's like if Nathan.
I think it shows a little bit of a underappreciation of the role of a spinner from the selectorial committee or whatever for England, because they obviously don't quite get it. They just think a spinner can just rock up after not bowling for 2 years and just get it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work like that, does it?
Well, I can guarantee if Nathan Lyon went down, we're not going to give Stephen O'Keefe a call. That's for damn sure. So I just don't know why a domestic spinner wasn't picked, because we went down that. I know what you said about they weren't exactly hitting top form in the county season, but Australia took a domestic spinner, Todd Murphy. He wasn't doing that well. If you look at Todd Murphy's stats at a Shield level that year, he wasn't breaking down any doors, and he worked out very well. So I think that that's why I said to you the last podcast that we did. I said it's a little bit disrespectful to the players that have trying to get into this English team and then they get someone out of retirement.
Yeah,
but
no, I totally agree.
That's the way they went, so they have to stick by it.
There's two reasons I said, wasn't there? The kind of what you just said there, and the fact that she's not bowled for 2 years. It just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, he's obviously a great player, and he's obviously a really good bloke, and he's answered the ball, he's done his best. But it was a little bit predictable, and I feel a little bit sorry for him, I have to say. The point that Jeremy makes about who moves up the order if Bairstow moves up the order and Folkes takes the gloves. I think I've kind of covered that to a degree, but I mean, it would really be as an opener, wouldn't it? Because every other, I mean, Pope was mentioned the other day.
I was going to say Pope. Would he be a candidate, Pope?
Well, Pope's obviously supposedly made number 3 his own. He's got a big double 100 against Ireland, which nobody else did. I mean, you could say it's only Ireland, but nobody else made a double 100 against Ireland. And I really like him as a batter. I think he's very well organised and stuff and what have you. But his first class record's immaculate. But you do have to earn selection, and he did look a little bit. It wasn't particularly astonishing in that first Test match. I mean, he's going to get another go. They're not going to change the team for the second Test, but he does need some runs, Ollie Pope. And he's obviously the vice captain now, and they made him the vice captain, so they've shown that trust in him. So he's probably on that basis unlikely to get dropped purely because he's part of the kind of the sort of management team, I guess. But it is interesting that he seems to be immune from criticism at times. But I do really like him. I do really like him as a player. Nick says, "Is abuse the norm? As Robinson and even most Poms feel it's all right in name and showing aggression." I mean, there is. I'm going to come back at you a little bit here, Lucas, and your Aussie compatriots, because there does seem to be quite a short memory. I'm not defending what Ollie Robinson did at all. I've been very vocal in my criticism of Ollie Robinson's behaviour, but there does seem to be quite a short memory, doesn't there? I mean, it wasn't that.
We kind of started it, didn't we?
Let me finish my accusations. There wasn't that long ago that David Warner was in the middle of a gaggle of players sending a South African batsman off, swearing his head off at him as he walks off the park. The Aussies are not particularly coming from the moral high grounds in terms of their behaviour of yesteryear, are they? Not too distant yesteryear.
I thought we were never going to bring up that series ever again, but. We're with the tower incident with De Kock. But
I do quite like the fact the Aussies have kind of under Pat Cummins seem to be nice people, still giving their all to win, but they don't seem to be quite as nasty. It started with Justin Langer. Justin Langer really kind of brought that in, saying maybe we're being, we've got to learn to be nice guys. We've got to be led to be mellow. Well, they had to a little bit in response to South Africans. And everything.
They did.
It's a PR exercise as much as anything, wasn't it? But there's been some pretty nasty moments from Australian cricketers in the past. So any Australians that come on Twitter that kind of say, the Poms are horrible. I mean, come on.
Well,
Aussies. Yeah.
We
should all be better, shouldn't we?
Well, we started it, with Merv Hughes, Dennis Lilly. Copying some flack. Michael Clark to James Anderson. I tweeted you that the other day. I don't know if you saw that. Out of a bit of sarcasm, people actually took that seriously. So no, I didn't mean that. Just a little bit.
My lawyers, Lucas.
Yeah, and I've been told to apologise or I'm going to get heavily fined. So no, it's always been in Australia. It's the Australian. I wouldn't say it's the Australian way, but it's kind of like a trait, to get in your face. Mitchell Johnson did it. So it's always been there. But as you said, since playing, it's been kind of mellow under Cummins. Everyone's being nice so far. Not too many comments apart from the Labuschagne comment to Ollie Robinson. So.
I think Lucas, from an English perspective, that people say, "Oh, it shows the passion. It shows that we want to see our players doing this to the Australians. They've done it to us in the past. We don't need to be as bad as the Australians, English people.
No.
Let's show the way. Let's keep the moral high ground. Let's not descend to their level."
Well, in a way, it's kind of, we mentioned last podcast that Australia, as long as they don't get into the heads, of this BazBall. But it seems to me in this test, it's got in the heads of England. Doing anti.
I do kind of my final point on the Robinson thing.
Yeah.
You can show. I've kind of said it in a roundabout way, but you can show your passion. You can get in the faces of your opposition. You can be intimidating. You can show passion. You can show that you are up for a fight, and you can celebrate without taking it across the line into personal abuse and being downright rude. And I think, people say, well, it's that the sledging has always been part of the game. Some of the best sledges you'll ever hear are the funny ones, aren't they? Where you've actually got somebody with a sense of humour that's reacted quickly off the cuff and just kind of fired back at somebody. It's not when you just called somebody an effing prick in response, is it? I think it just shows a real lack of imagination verbally and a lack of real control as a player myself.
I said we're never going to go back to this series again. But what was your take, if you remember, the Rabada incident on Smith? Where he got out Steve Smith and he got right in his face.
Was that the one where he celebrated and ran past him and jumped up and landed almost next to him and ran on?
Yeah.
I didn't actually think there was too much wrong with that myself, because I don't think there was any eye contact. I might be wrong with this, but in my recollection, I don't think there was too much eye contact. He was just running straight down the pitch, jumped up in celebration, landed quite close to him and ran on. He was obviously in the proximity of Steve Smith, and I could see how that might be interpreted, but I don't think he did that much wrong in that instance. Whereas did you compare that with the Ollie Robinson one? When Ollie Robinson shouted the initial F off, he was staring straight at Usman Khawaja. And yes, you effing prick came as he tailed off into his England group, but it was obviously still directed at Aussie. So I don't think he can. I've seen people saying he was saying it to himself. It wasn't directed straight at. Just look at the replays from the different angles. He was looking straight at him.
The reason I brought that up, this is the most interesting part. Rabada got suspended for that. So, and Ollie Robinson's yet to even get a fine. So.
I don't see that. I can understand how somebody might interpret that, and I'm not going to suggest that I know everything on this. And but I didn't see the Rabada thing as being anywhere in the. It's not like he landed there and said "F off you, effing prick," is it? He kind of landed there and just carried on. You maybe say it's a little bit of intimidation. He got too close. I don't know, but I didn't see that as being as bad as the Ollie Robinson one myself.
That's why I compared to, because one got suspended and one hasn't even got a fine. But I guess that's the way it is to the ICC. We never know what they go through their minds these days.
I've lost track of how the match referee works. Do they announce the fine on the evening of, or do they announce it 2 days after a test match? I don't know what the timescale is, but it doesn't seem to have seem to have been anything in relation to the Ollie Robinson incident at all, does it?
No, they did it. Yeah, the day after, when they decided to fine England, Australia over rates, match fees, and
maybe he's just got away with it, and they've just said "other quiet word" or something. I don't know, but I don't want Ollie Robinson vilified and banned or anything. I just don't want him to do it again. I kind of the thing that made it. Sorry, I said it was my last word. It's not.
Go ahead.
The thing that made it worse for me was the fact that in the press conference that night, and it was interesting that England put up Ollie Robinson after that. In the press conference that night, where the media gave him the opportunity to almost apologise, he doubled down, didn't he?
He did.
And said, Aussies have been doing this for years. Ricky Ponting, who had kind of came out and said, well, I haven't played for 15 years, so he's got a good memory. But basically said they've been doing it to us. It's all part of the theatre. I mean, Neil said about the professional part of the theatre thing. It's not professional to call somebody an effing prick, in my mind. But anyway.
No. Well, funny, Robinson said that about the 3 number 11s in our team, and that worked out really well for Robbo. Because
you're better off just keeping your mouth shut, aren't you? And just doing and just taking somebody's wickets instead of actually calling them out.
Yeah, and that's not just for Ollie Robinson. That goes for Marnus Labuschagne as well. Please be quiet.
Goes for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think as well. Just one. Sorry, but one final thing.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Ollie Robinson, that press conference, kind of doubling down and doing everything he'd done. I just want him to concentrate on his cricket. He's got a potential to be a world class. I mean, he already is, I think, but to be a really top level world class bowler. Just concentrate on your cricket and just let everything. That we've heard people in the past say, it's just all noise, peripheral noise. I'm just going to concentrate on my game. He needs to do that, I think, at the moment.
Well, it seems to me that England doubled down on everything. Is that because of the way that McCallum wants his players to be? Well, when we do an action or execute an action, we want to be fully committed to it.
I think England will go again. They will beat. They don't know anything else. That is the way they play the game. They will. I watched the entirety of Ben Stokes' press conference after the match. He basically said the same. He said, we will. Somebody asked him a question about, against South Africa when you lost. You basically came out and said, we're going to double down. We're going to go even harder. And then you came back and started winning. He said, and they said, you don't really need to do that this time, do you? Because everybody knows their roles in this. And he said, it's going to be, we'll just say, let's just do it again and go again. And ultimately, in a way, he's right that, in the past, Aussies have come to England and been very competitive and won matches, and England have not maybe been quite as aggressive as they should have been in all aspects of the word. And they got so close this time, didn't they? They went down to the final knockings, final mashings, and Australia got across the line. Pat Cummins, just a word for Pat Cummins before we finish. I thought his innings was superb. I mean, he's known for his bowling, but obviously anybody that's watched the IPL and seen any of Pat Cummins' batting and knows that he can hold a bat to some extent and he can whack a big ball and stuff. But it's such a sensible innings, the way he came in. And I thought the tactics that England used, for all of this BazBall aggressive, funky fields in the test, they ended up putting a lot of men back. And I thought that for the last hour, or for the last I noticed it because I was on commentary, and it was from about when Australia needed about 60 runs. All of a sudden, the field started to spread a little bit. There were singles, there were twos. If you nudged it, you could get back for 2. And the runs started flowing quite well. There's 2 schools of thought. That maybe they could have kept the older ball because it was harder to hit. But then they had the route over where Cummins suddenly hit him over the top twice. I thought that Ben Stokes, and the thing is with this, this might sound critical of Ben Stokes, it's not meant to be, because I've been, as I said on the preview, I've been so impressed with Ben Stokes as captain for England. I think he's got most things right. And there is no manual, because how many test matches go down to a final session like that where it's 50-50 all the way through? Captaining in that situation, he's still quite an inexperienced captain, Ben Stokes. He won't have been in that situation. Somebody mentioned to me on Twitter that it was the first time they've seen Ben Stokes almost seeking counsel from other people on the pitch, getting advice, and maybe they've been better off just doing it his way. And continuing to be a little bit aggressive and when I mean aggressive, I mean have catches in there, because they needed 2 wickets. Having everybody back on the fence doesn't necessarily get you 2 wickets. So I thought England did go a little bit negative, but Pat Cummins batted so well.
I don't want to be critical of Ben Stokes. Actually, I do, but not really. But I thought it was a complete cop out what he did, complete cop out, and it went against everything that they said. Now I don't know if. They brought on Harry Brook as the first change bowler. I think that was nothing more than a PR stunt. Try to get in the minds of Australia. Wow. It's just why would you bring on Harry? Can you think of any other reason other than try to get in the heads of Australia? Why would you bring on Harry Brook? I found it amusing that Mark Taylor said, "Well, he must have done something in the nets because I can remember doing that to Ricky Ponting." I'm like, oh please. Give me an absolute spell. I just thought it was a complete cop out. because if you want to bowl Harry Brook, got no problem with that, no problem. So why didn't we see that further in the Test match? And then to go, as you said, defensive fields when there were still 60, 70 runs to get, I thought that was a complete cop out. And I think
I think that England in that last hour had a little bit of Australia at Headingley in that last hour. And it's difficult, it's difficult to captain. You think back to, well, it was your captain, Tim Payne, and how he struggled to get the right field to Ben Stokes. And, ultimately, it's a very difficult job to get the balance right between trying to take the wickets and actually also sort of defending the runs. I think on both occasions, Tim Payne and Ben Stokes went more on the defensive than on the attack. And I think Tim Payne got a little bit, got a bit criticised for how he dealt with that. And I think Ben Stokes fell into the same camp a little bit. But it's difficult because, as I said, there's no blueprint, there's no captain's manual for a session like that, because you very rarely have those, Test matches don't tend to bubble up into such thrilling climaxes as Headingley 2019 and Edgbaston 2023, do they? And I mean, ultimately, let's just kind of forget the partisanship, forget the BazBall chat, forget team selections for Lords, second Test, forget all of the other stuff. We're both cricket fans. We both love Test cricket. Everybody out there is watching, listening to this because they love Test cricket. And it's cliched, but Test cricket was the winner, wasn't it? Because anybody watching that match, it was glorious. The fact that it was 50-50 pretty much all the way through the match. The fact that we had some really fine batting from Khawaja and Root. We had Broad running in through a brick wall for his team. We had Cummins doing the same for Australia. It went right down to the final ball, basically, of the Test match. It did, and it was just glorious, wasn't it? And if we have 4 more Test matches that are remotely like that, this Ashes series is going to be spectacular. I can't wait to watch the next one.
Like I said, I've got no problem with it being that close as long as we win. That's the only thing that matters. And I'm sorry, James, but that name you mentioned, I don't know who that is. Sorry, so I don't remember him at all captaining Australia.
Just quite a few times. He was a fine man.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm sorry, but that's kind of a blur to me. After bottling.
It was funny because watching that Test thing, after Headingley 2019, the Aussies almost like had a naughty boy classroom, didn't they? We were forced to watch it back again and give a frank account of what they thought about it all, to kind of get rid of the demons or whatever from that experience, which I think probably worked. But I don't think England will be doing that. I mean, Brendan McCullum is so laid back, it's ridiculous. He'll have just said, fair play, boys, well played. I mean, Ben Stokes in the press conferences, he's proud of his team. They played really well. They got so close to winning. They'll come back hard at Lords and they'll try and win at Lords. And that's the way that England will see it. And you see the pictures of Brendan McCullum on the balcony. You can't tell if England are winning or losing by the way he's just kind of lying back there, with his shades on and his kind of legs up on the furniture. And the only thing I said on the commentary towards the end last night, the only way you could actually see that Brendan McCullum was feeling any stress whatsoever was that he was chewing his gum at maybe 1 mile an hour faster. That was basically the only thing that was different.
Before we do go, and of course Tim Payne was the player I was mentioning, and no, I don't agree with how his career ended. I thought that was very poor. If anyone's regarding that, I hate Tim Payne. That was a very sad situation, that how his career ended. But just before we do go,
don't go down that route.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's his personal business, and I don't think anyone had a business to invade that.
No, Lucas, no, Lucas, no, Lucas. He was guilty as sin.
I won't go down there, but I'm just saying I think it's sad how it ended. I didn't like him as a captain.
For balance, Lucas, I think there were very much 2 sides to that, and there was a female victim involved in that as well.
Yeah, that I understand, but as a captain, I didn't like him per se. But I don't think his career should have ended like that. But that's his own problem. So
you're doubling down, Lucas. You're doubling down, man. There was a female victim involved in that. You can't just go around texting people your private parts, Lucas, and expect that not to be classed as assault or invasion of somebody's life.
Of course,
that's not the dumb thing, man.
Of course, it takes. I don't want to pictureize that, James. I don't want that memory going around me. But no, didn't like him as a captain. So don't know who you're talking about there. But before we do,
my opinion for balance was that he abused his position of power and
he did. Yeah, he did.
And kind of sexually, inappropriately sexually
Yeah.
approached a female member of staff, and I think he was very wrong to do that.
Yeah. No, that I do. That I 100% do agree. But in today's stage, of course, someone has to leak it, don't they? But no, you shouldn't have done that, Tim. Unfortunately, and it cost you badly. But before we do go, James, I do want to mention, because we're going to wrap the show up, I do want to mention the player rating. So we're going to go through these one by one very quickly. I'll start. You can start with Ben Duckett out of 10.
1.
Yep. Me, David Warner, 5. Showed it was a little bit better against Broad. He eventually did get out to Broad, but I thought I think he's going to be okay, David Warner. Zach Crawley.
First innings all right. Second innings usual. Zach 4,
Yep.
5 maybe.
Osman Karaja, no doubt 10. That's an easy one. Who's at 3? Joe Root.
Ollie Pope.
Sorry.
Ollie Pope gets me. I'd give him a 2 or 3. Joe Root gets a 10.
Yep. 3, Labuschagne. 2, awful with his mouth, way off with his batting. So a 2. Then Joe Root.
10.
Yep. Completely agree with that.
They did
Travis
run
Head.
past one in the second innings, but I think he did it right by then.
Yeah. Travis Head off Steve Smith. Sorry, off Steve Smith. Sorry, but I'm going to give him a 5. Pretty off.
I wouldn't be that generous. What did he do?
It's just my bias, Steve Smith.
What did he do? Didn't do anything.
No, well, exactly. Probably not.
He did no more than Ollie Pope, who I've just given a 2 or a 3 to, so you can't give him a 5.
Oh, this segment's going well. Harry Brook.
First innings, he showed a lot of. I don't know, he fitted in. You wouldn't have believed he was playing his first Ashes Test match. He just took to it. He's got something about him, Harry Brook. Second innings, 46, wasn't it? I think as well.
Yep.
Definitely one that's exciting for this series, and I think he gets a 6 or something like that easily, maybe even a 7 with a fair wind behind him. He's bowling for his bowling as well. Give him an extra 1 for his bowling. Take him to 7.
It's actually good. No, to be fair, it was actually good.
He's not bad bowler. He's bowled, for Yorkshire in limited overs cricket, he's bowled a few overs.
Whether Australia didn't want to get out to him and just thought they can just block him off, I don't know. I'll never know with that one.
I think, if you look at Harry Brook, he's, as I say, he's bowled a little bit in limited overs cricket for Yorkshire, and he reminds me a little bit. I mean, like you said, Ponting maybe, or a Mark Butcher for England, just kind of like your very medium pace. Can maybe just, if you get a bit of assistance, I mean, I think that's maybe what they were looking at, because you take pace off a little bit, the ball maybe swings, gives the ball a chance to swing, and they weren't getting any swing elsewhere, and they were maybe just looking at that a little bit. But he's not a bad bowler.
No, just incidentally, they used Steve Waugh a lot, mainly in the limited overs game with his bowling, just bowling 105, 110 kilometres per hour darts. Which seems to be very successful, especially in his ODI career. For me, Travis Head, a 6, good first innings. Should have probably went on to it, but he got out to a peach of a ball to Morinelli in the second innings. So a 6 for me. Ben Stokes.
Batting wise, nothing. Bowling wise, he'll run through a brick wall for his team. Batting wise, I mean, second innings he showed a little bit more patience, which is good, because he's just been throwing his wicket away. He did that a little bit in the first innings. I think he captained the team well. 4.
Yep. Cameron Green for me. All of a sudden, people are screaming out, knowing what I'm going to give Cameron Green. Look, my problem with Cameron Green. How long we got? He is a very nervous starter, though. He's got that nervous starter thing where it takes 30 balls to get into his innings, which there's nothing wrong with that. But before that, he looked like getting out every ball. I can't judge his bowling because he only bowled limited. Batting, he made some starts, didn't go on with him, but he's such a nervous starter. Sean Marsh had the knack of that also, a very nervous starter. Once he get past the 30 balls, he looked a world beater. So maybe that's a technique problem, a mental problem. I'm not a batsman, or not a good one, so I don't know what's wrong with that. Anyway, I'm going to give him a 5. Johnny Bairstow.
First innings, his runnable 78 was very very useful. Keeping, I mean, off his 78, you probably give him a 7. His keeping gives him a -2, takes him back to 5 maybe.
Yeah, Alex Carey for me, fantastic with the gloves. First innings, fantastic. Second innings, I think he was looking to chase runs. I'm going to give him a 7. I thought he was above average this Test match. He was he was good. Who else for England? I'm just trying to remember. Moeen Ali.
Hard to rank Moeen, isn't it? Because of all the trials and tribulations.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
3.
Yeah. And that's no disrespect to Moeen. It's just too tough. I think you would have had to do something quite brilliantly. But that was too much to ask of anyone. If you're not bowling for 2 years or batting for 2 years, if you come back as a batsman, too much to ask. Pat Cummins for me, first innings got taken to the clean. I was very nervous with Pat Cummins with his bowling in the first innings. He's been off with his bowling. Second innings was okay, was good, but his batting was fantastic, unexpectedly, because the last 2 years he has fallen off that. And I don't know if you remember this, James, but in the Sheffield Shield he has batted at 5, so that's how good his batting can be. So in Sheffield Shield, they've got very good bowlers in the Sheffield Shield competition, and him batting at 5 shows you he is a good batter. So I'm going to give him an 8. Basically, on his batting in the second innings, bowling was okay. Stuart Broad.
I thought Broad was absolutely fantastic in this match.
Yeah.
There's been a few times I've kind of started to write him off a little bit, I guess, and I said on here, if I was picking my everybody fit England 11, whether Broad would make it into that or not, I don't know. But I thought he was the best of England's bowlers in this Test. I think he just kept going. He has that ability from nowhere suddenly to go bang bang, and he got bang bangs against Warner, Smith, Labuschagne, etc. The big scalps really. He was all over the Aussie big boys. So fantastic, and I would probably give him an 8. I think 8 or even a 9, because I thought he was excellent.
Incidentally, I thought he was England's best bowler.
Yeah.
By a mile, not even close. Same here with this guy, Nathan Lyon, Australia's best bowler by a mile. I'm going to give him a 10. 4 wickets in the first day, incredible, never heard of, especially in England. 4 wickets in the second innings, made runs, got us over the line. I'm going to give him a perfect 10. Ollie Robinson.
I thought he. He wasn't his track, was it? It wasn't Ollie's track. He bowled a few good balls in there. I mean, I think his first innings stats were kind of improved a little bit because he blew the tail away, but that's been England's problem at times. Often the tail's wagged, and he stopped that happening. 3 for 55, maybe flattered him a little bit, but I thought he did all right. Didn't like what he said, but I'm going to take that out of the equation with my markings. I'm going to give him 6.
Yep.
It was okay. Can do better, but I think the tracks will be better for him.
Well, same with this guy, Scott Boland. Wasn't his track. However, when conditions did suit him, he was completely dangerous. But we have to face value, and he's crucial with the bat. Whether you like it or not, those 20 runs were crucial. But I'm not going to give him a 7 or a 9 or a 10 based on that. I'm going to give him a 5. Wasn't his track. Was pretty expensive. But probably a 5, basically just on his batting. The last one for England, James Anderson.
Can't believe how you're getting carried away with Scott Boland's batting, honestly. Jimmy Anderson had a really poor game by his standards. There was a couple of balls he bowled which were jaffers. You expect that from him, but I think overall he was quite subdued, and I think maybe a kind of a 4 or 5. He kind of ran in, he bowled his overs, but never looked like he was good. It wasn't just lacking a little bit of pizzazz and sparkle, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, if Jimmy Anderson could make,
it wasn't his track either.
Yeah. No. Well, if Jimmy Anderson made 20 runs, he'd probably win that Test match, James. So any chance of him making runs?
Well, he did do in the second innings, didn't he?
No, the reverse sweep, the first ball reverse sweep, unbelievable. We would have thought that.
Sweep as well as anybody in the world. Jimmy does.
He does. credit. Last person for me, Josh Hazelwood. I thought he was okay. Going through injury problems, I'm going to give him a 4. Don't think he was bad. I don't think he was good. Batting, he didn't bat in the second inning, so can't give him anything on that. So I think 4. So performance-wise, out of 10, James, the whole team.
I mean, you can't give different marks for it. I think it was so close overall.
Yeah.
And both teams contributed to a wonderful experience of watching a test match.
I'll rephrase the question. Did England play their best cricket in this match?
I don't think Australia did either.
Yeah. I don't think they. I think England gave as good as they did, but I think Australia could have gave better. That's my interpretation.
I don't think either team played its best cricket in this test match. As I say, the first innings, I think both teams left runs out there in the first innings. I think bowling wise, they'll get better tracks, but it was hard work for the bowlers. Catches went down on both sides. I think there's room for improvement from both teams. I think
you can, before we head off, you can disagree or not, but I think out of all the sessions, I think England majorly dominated the game. I think there are parts where Australia came back, but mainly it was majority England's.
Never by much though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I was watching WinViz on the thing, and the kind of the lurches of WinViz after every wicket and every run. And I was saying to somebody the other day, every time it seemed to be in my mind 50-50. WinViz was saying 70% England and 30% Australia. I was just thinking, what are they watching? Because Australia have got a really good chance from here. If they just take a wicket off this partnership just develops, they're right back in this match. And often it did. As you say, it was probably often England edging ahead and then Australia coming back, and it was going like that throughout. But there was never much in that match at all. It was just brilliant. It was perfect. I mean, I kind of describe Test cricket sometimes as a feature film, and you get some poor feature films, don't you? But the very best feature films where the story develops and you kind of get your little plays within plays and your heroes become heroes, and you watch it through to a thrilling climax. That was that test match. When you get a brilliant test match like that, or the one at Headingley in 2019, or some of the ones we've seen in the past, test cricket's superb, isn't it?
Oh, and you wanted 3 test series, James. After seeing that, you still stand by that?
I want a 3 test series for everything but the Ashes, Lucas. We've decided that, didn't we? We changed how we were going to do that. You kind of throw me under the bus there. It's just kind of very typical of you, that.
I can only try. Any more questions off Twitter, James, and we'll wrap up our show?
No, we're done and dusted. We've been on.
I'm gonna leave you to wrap up, James. I'm gonna leave you to wrap up.
Well, I will see you again in between the next test matches, I guess, and we will obviously be back after Lords and between all of the test matches as we go through this rather fantastic Ashes series. Thanks to Neil for joining us earlier. Thanks to you, Lucas, as well from Down Under. And we will be back. Well, looking forward to Lords. Absolutely looking forward to Lords.
2-0, please. That's all I want. 2-0. 2-0. I can feel it. I said 5-0. I want 2-0. Now, if we win 2-0, James, we're up 2-0. You'll start to get a little bit nervous, James, about that whitewash.
I did. I mean, we're kind of opening up another subject here, but I did say to somebody the other day, as an Englishman, I want to see England win. As somebody that's working on the matches as a commentator, I just appreciate both sides for playing good cricket. And ultimately, in that final session, I wasn't actually that bothered Australia winning or England winning. I was just enjoying it because it was just fantastic cricket. But I think as a kind of student of the game, if that doesn't sound too pompous, somebody that's loved the game since he was 7 and kind of read books and followed the series left, right, and centre. I am, and somebody that quite likes sports psychology, and I'm just fascinated by this series as to how BazBall goes. If Australia do go 2-0 up, are there going to be team changes? Are they going to start to change how they look at it, or are they going to stick their heels in and just play BazBall? Because when BazBall's good, when they get BazBall absolutely bang on, these Australians, you'll be running for the hills because it will absolutely dominate you. But when you're playing BazBall against, with all due respect, Pakistan on a flat track, it's probably easier than playing Australia or India on tracks that are doing their bowlers some favours. So it's a tough job to play BazBall really consistently. I mean, BazBall, as we said, isn't always hitting sixes. It's been just positive. But I think sometimes England do get a bit carried away with all this BazBall stuff. And at times, maybe, if I was going to change anything in the England camp, I think Rob Key, Ben Stokes, and Brendan McCullum have taken plenty of plaudits for BazBall, quite rightly, because it's been superb and it's entertaining. They maybe just need to add a fourth person into that group who's just a bit boring and a bit more traditional, and maybe just calms it down a bit at times, and maybe just kind of gives a counter argument and just reins them in. Because you can get a bit when things are going so well and you're dead excited about stuff. You can kind of. I lost my head when Stokes declared, and I was thinking, yay, and then I thought, no. But and I think there is a temptation for the English dressing room to kind of keep going, yay, 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 and maybe they just need one voice to go no every now and again, and just calm it down. Because I saw George DeBell say BazBall's great and stuff, but it just maybe just needs an element of sophistication at times and a bit more. Maybe engage head rather than heart sometimes, I think. But you can't say it's not entertaining cricket, can you? It's absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic cricket. All I want, I just want 2-0. When we do this podcast next week, I want us up 2-0. I want BazBall on its knees, holding on by a little straight, little hair. That's what I want. So please, God, 2-0, please.
Right, I'm going to mute his microphone now to stop him ranting on about that nonsense. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching on Gaurav's YouTube channel and on the Cricket Badger podcast channel. Simultaneous transmission today. Hopefully that worked okay. We'll find out as we come off. But thanks for Gaurav for setting that up for me earlier on today. And we'll see you very soon indeed. Enjoy your week off between the Ashes, and we'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody.